Chapter 7, the Garden of Becoming. There is a garden that does not appear on any map. It cannot be bought, inherited, or stolen. You cannot stumble upon it by accident, for it only opens to those who have chosen to enter. This is the Garden of Becoming, the place where you are shaped in the quiet, where growth happens in secret, and where no one watches but the one who planted you. We leave the salt-burnt air of the shore and turn inland, the crash of waves fading behind us. The path winds between whispering grasses, then narrows into a corridor of green. At first, it is only wild growth, bushes heavy with leaves, branches woven overhead into a tunnel of shadow and light. But then we reach a wooden arch grown over with vine, its leaves thick and glossy. Beyond it, everything changes. The first breath of the garden. The air here is warm and scented with 100 kinds of flowers. Colors are sharper, as if the light itself has been filtered to the heart of a gem. There is no sound of the sea now, only the wind moving through leaves, the slow murmur of water somewhere near. Beds of flowers and herbs stretch in every direction. Some are heavy with blooms, bending under their own beauty. Others lie bare, their soil turned and dark, ready for planting. Along narrow paths, fruit trees stand in neat rows, their branches stretching toward each other like old friends. At the far end, a gardener bends over a bed, hands deep in the earth. Their clothes are plain, but their eyes, when they lift them to meet yours, are steady and bright. They nod once, a greeting without words, and return to their work. The garden's law. From the great V, the teaching comes. Every seed knows its own time. You cannot command a seed to grow, nor can you beg it to bloom before it is ready. The Garden of Becoming is a place for those who understand that they themselves are seed, requiring patience, nourishment, and seasons unseen. Here, the gardener works whether anyone watches or not. They prune branches for no audience, water soil that seems already damp, pull weeds that have only just begun to show. They tend to what is visible and what is hidden, knowing both are parts of the same work. The first tale, the waiting flower. In one bed grew a plant whose leaves were healthy, but whose bud never opened. Season passed, flowers around it bloomed and withered, bees came and went, and still it waited. The other plants whispered, in the way plants do, calling it stubborn, slow, perhaps even afraid. But the gardener never hurried it. They watered it, loosened the soil, kept the weeds away. Then one morning, without warning, the bud opened, not in a timid unfolding, but in a full, sudden bloom, so bright it seemed to gather the light of every season it had waited. And it bloomed longer than any flower in the garden that year. The gardener smiled, for they had known it was only waiting for its own appointed time. The second tale, the neglected bed. In another corner, there was a plot that had been ignored for years. The soil was hard, the weeds thick, and nothing grew there. When the gardener finally turned their attention to it, the work was slow and back-breaking. Stones had to be lifted, roots dug out, earth turned and fed. It seemed thankless, and for months, no change came. But in time, shoots began to appear. First small, then strong. By the third year, that bed was the most abundant in the garden, producing more fruit than any other. And all because the gardener had chosen not to abandon what others had written off as barren. The third tale, the tree alone. There was a young tree at the edge of the garden, planted far from the others. It grew crooked at first, its branches uneven. The gardener did not try to make it match the others, but gave it space, pruning only where it might break or under its own weight. Years later, that tree stood apart still, but its roots were deep, and in drought, it was the last to lose its leaves. In its branches, birds built nests and found shelter, for it had learned to hold water and shade in his solitude. The garden within. The garden of becoming is not made of soil and petals alone. It is the inner landscape of your life. Every skill you practice, every wound you tend, every joy you plant is part of its growth. For singles, the garden is where you prepare yourself, not for a specific person, but for the fullness of who you are meant to be. You learn new things not to impress a future partner, but because your spirit longs for them. You heal old wounds not to be ready for someone else, but because you deserve wholeness. For couples, the garden is where each partner continues to grow even after love is found. Relationships wilt when the individuals within them stop becoming. The richest unions are made of two gardens, flourishing side by side. The garden stairs. The gardener approaches with a small pouch. From it, they pour a single seed into your palm. It is plain, no larger than your fingernail. They tell you to plant it somewhere in the garden and tend it yourself. If you return too soon, the soil will still be closed and the seed will not have stirred. If you neglect it, weeds will overtake it before it breaks the surface. But if you tend it faithfully and return in its right season, you will see what has grown. And you will know whether you are ready to tend the greater garden of love itself. Practical reflections for today. For singles, choose 3 seeds to plant this year. New skills, healing practices, or creative pursuits. Water them regularly without worrying when or how they will bloom. For couples, encourage each other to tend personal growth without fear or resentment. Support each other's separate gardens so both can flourish. For all, remember that growth unseen is still growth. The roots strengthen before the flower shows. The gardener does not wave us goodbye, for they know we will return in time. The path narrows again, the hedges part, and we find ourselves standing on the edge of a vast valley. The wind carries our voices away, but faintly, impossibly, another voice answers from across the distance. The call across the valley awaits.